Everyone. Let's just give all just a few moments to settle in from the waiting room. I see everyone's connecting. Just give another moment for everyone to come in and get settled. With now just a few more folks who are continuing to arrive, we can go ahead and begin. A very warm hello and welcome to everyone with us today. Welcome to, in my own words, Holocaust Survivor Stories. The series is presented by a partnership between the Holocaust Memorial Resource and Education Center of Florida and the USC Shoah Foundation. My name is Serena Ahmed, and I am the program coordinator at our Holocaust Center. Our mission is to use the history and lessons of the Holocaust to build a just and caring community free of anti-Semitism and all forms of prejudice and bigotry. We are located just north of downtown Orlando. And in fact, we are now open back 6 days a week. And so we hope we'll actually be able to welcome you all in person to visit the museum soon. Today, though, it is my absolute privilege to introduce you all to an inspiring woman named Claire Soria. And I must say to everyone here, truly, she is one of my most favorite people. First, a very quick note, especially for those joining us for the first time. Please know to write any questions you might have for Claire into the chat box. Time permitting, I would love to facilitate a few of your questions to Claire towards the end of the program. Claire, we cannot thank you enough for being here with us and our community to share with us aspects of your story. As you know, I'm going to pose questions to you to guide our time together. And always just let me know if you prefer not to respond to a certain question, and we'll move on. And of course, also just jump in anytime with anything you want to make sure to say that I did not have the foresight myself to ask you.
I wish to thank you as well for inviting me to talk about my life during the Holocaust and soon after the Holocaust that I will discuss today.
Thank you, Claire. Without further ado, I wonder if you might begin before the war by telling us a little about your father, Nathan, and your mother, Sarah, before the war. Were they both from Belgium originally?
Since I was barely 5 years old when the war started, most of my memories are very minor, but I did get some of the information that you are asking for from a beloved cousin who survived the Holocaust. So I am going to have to read this due to the fact that I really don't know enough to make everyone aware of where my parents actually came from. So I have here that my mother, Sarah, was born December 12, 1906. Her parents were Asher and Miriam Skap, and they lived in Belgium, Poland. I never met my grandparents. They lost their lives during the Holocaust. They had 9 children. My mother moved with my father to Brussels, Belgium around 1933. I was born in 1935 and remember that my mother was a very sweet person. Her hair was very fine like mine, and she was very slender. She lovingly took care of me. We often went to the park with my aunt and cousins, and she made the most delicious sugar cookies and homemade jelly. She always made sure that I had plenty to eat. She would always say, "Esst mein Kind," which in Yiddish, her native language, meant, "Eat, my child." My father's parents lived in Rybien, Poland, which is halfway between Warsaw, Gdansk, and Dubžin, about 20 kilometers from Rybien. Dubžin is where a huge massacre took place in 1939. My father Nathan's mother had 3 sons and a daughter. My dad's two brothers joined the army in 1914, 1918. One brother watched his brother get shot. When he returned home, he never uttered another word. They lived in a one-room house. I never met my grandfather Herschel and grandmother Hinda, who I was told was very energetic, resourceful, and always prepared to face any problem. They too lost their lives during the Holocaust. I'm told that my father was very intelligent and cultured. He was a socialist, not a communist. He did not believe in bloody revolution, but evolution. He joined the Spanish War in the International Brigade and became an officer. My cousin Nina mentioned that they were, where they lived in Poland, a man would carry water over his shoulders, which he delivered to the town. Jews were not welcome. They were forbidden to attend school and rarely allowed to enter a classroom. Those who were allowed had to stand in back of the room. Would you like me to continue, or do you have some questions?
So I would love if you would continue.
All right,
And we're gonna make our way next into your birth in Brussels in 1935.
it's coming soon. My father Nathan's sister's name was Leah. That's Nina's mother, my favorite cousin. She was married to Shlomo Meister. He belonged to the Socialist Party, again, not communist. Being Jewish and belonging to either party was dangerous. His parents sold all of their belonging in order to raise enough money for him to move to Belgium, where they needed workers to work in their coal mines in the Wallons. In 1933, he received his visa, which was good for 2 years. By then, he was able to establish residency and sent for his wife and little daughter, Nina, my favorite cousin. Next, he sent money for my father, who also ended up working in the coal mines. Last, he was able to send enough money for his sister Dora and her husband Beryl and their little girl Miriam. That was truly the whole family that I recalled when I was a little girl. It was my Nina and her parents. It was Beryl and Dora and their little girl Miriam. And it was also, as you well know, my mom and dad and me. So there were 3 families we used to get together all the time. So that's why I wanted to let you know how they happened to get to Belgium, because the situation in Poland was so bad for the Jewish people at the time. And Belgium actually was a safe haven because they knew that they could be free. So now I will talk about me. By the time I was a little girl, my uncle Shlomo, again, this is Nina's father, ran a men's tailor shop. My father made ladies' dresses. I remember the pretty dresses he made for me and the pair of pants I wore in kindergarten before the war. I always say that I believe I was the first child, or maybe the first girl, to wear pants in public. But I had no problem with the children. I was accepted just like all the others. All we had to do is wear a little apron over our clothes, and I actually have a picture of me in kindergarten with the children. And we were all wearing the apron, but I was the one with the pants.
And Claire, you wore trunks because your father wanted to make sure that you stayed warm.
Exactly. Just like my mom wanted to make sure I was being fed, my dad also wanted to make sure I kept warm. It did get cold. It's very rainy also in Belgium all the time. So I even remember going to my father's workshop and playing with the buttons that were by the sewing machines. My Uncle Beryl was a shoemaker. I remember wearing a pair of shoes he made just for me. So as I said, I was less than 5 years old at the time when the war came into being, but those are the memories I had before the war. But then in 1940, Belgium was invaded by Nazi Germany. And as I said, I was 5 years old at the time. Do you wish me to continue?
Please, would you mind telling us your experiences on what you remember seeing or hearing during this invasion?
I have very pleasant memories of my early years. More than anything, I had no problem assimilating with children in kindergarten. My mom and I lived in a small apartment above a bakery. We got together with my cousins and aunts and uncles during the Jewish holidays. We would go to the park and play tags around a pretty pond filled with goldfish, where I often scraped my knees. We played and had picnics in the woods, what's called Bois de la Cambre, and even went to Blankenberg, a beach by the North Sea. I learned to speak French while my family continued to speak mostly Yiddish. In other words, my life seemed pretty normal. Then around May 1940, I heard extremely loud noises and looked out of the window. I heard tanks and endless row of soldiers going down the street. Soldiers marched into buildings, taking down Belgian flags and replacing them with Nazi flags with the swastika sign. Everyone was glued to their radio. I really had no idea what was going on. When I was told that I would be staying with a neighbor because my mother wanted me to be safe, I didn't mind. They were a very nice Christian couple whose names were Leah and Lambert Sabot. They promised that my mom would come to visit me, which she did when she felt it was safe. My dad also visited me when he could. At first, even my school teacher tried to come to the house when I was forbidden to attend school because I was Jewish, but stopped when she realized the danger. Going outside was also dangerous, especially when the Gestapo went from house to house looking for Jewish people, but that was later. Early on, we were told to sew Jewish stars on our clothes. Food became scarce and was rationed. Everyone had to get in line to receive food stamps, and Jewish people who went into hiding did not feel safe. Do you want me to continue?
Please, please. And if you would remind us, how did your parents know the Sabo family, the Christian family who took you into hiding?
The couple that lived next door to us on top of the bakery were very nice people. As I said, they were Christian, they were friends of my mom. And oftentimes she would ask them if they could watch me if she had to go out and do errands. And so I really did know these people. And as I said, they were very, very caring people. The couple where I stayed were musicians or had been musicians. The lady proceeded to teach me how to play the piano, first on a player piano. You needed to use the pedals like you do on a sewing machine, but soon they converted it into a regular piano. Her husband, who still played the drums in the cafe nearby, would bring me to listen to him play until it became unsafe to be seen. Around that time, they suggested that I change my name just to be safe. I chose my friend's name, which was Yvette, and they added the last name Collin and asked me to call them grand-mère and grand-père, which in French means grandma and grandpa. Much later, I learned that Lambert was part of the Belgian resistance, but so was my father and so was my uncle. My mother went into hiding with my Aunt Dora and Uncle Beryl, the shoe manufacturer, while my father had no intentions to go into hiding. Instead, being part of the Belgian resistance, he delivered important documents and arms to the Allies. On my 6th birthday, my father brought me a sewing basket. In it, he wrote to my beloved daughter Clara on her 6th birthday, "Your papa, Nathan." My mom loved putting pictures of her family in Poland and of us taken before the war. This basket with the picture is the one thing I kept and brought with me throughout my life. As a matter of fact, I have it right here.
Thank you, Claire, for sharing this with us.
Listening to the radio was dangerous, but was something that we did every single day in order to learn the progress of the Allies. We did not have a telephone, but there was one in the building where we lived. When a call came in, the family I lived with were told to come down and answer the phone. That's how they found out that my mother, Aunt Dora, and Uncle Beryl were discovered by the Nazi where they were hiding and taken away. And that's when I found out. They found out, told me, and then I cried and I cried. However, I always hoped and prayed that the day would come when they would be released. Shortly after my Aunt Dora, Uncle Beryl, and my mother were taken away by force, the Sabots received another phone call. That's when I learned that my cousin Nina, who at the age of 15 refused to stay home and do nothing and insisted to take part in the Belgian resistance, where she delivered important documents on her bicycle to the Allies, someone denounced her. I later learned that when she returned home, she was unaware that the Gestapo was waiting for her. And soon after, the Gestapo stopped the streetcar my father was riding in, and he was taken away. He was also on his way to deliver important papers to a client. And once again, the Sabots were notified and told me. Each time they made sure that we would leave Brussels and go to Liège to stay on a farm of friends until they felt that it was safe to return to Brussels.
And Nina was in the resistance as well, in the
Yeah.
Belgian resistance as well. Would you mind sharing for us how she would store messages and in her basket of her bicycle?
The Jewish people up to that time were able to do their grocery shopping. So my cousin Nina would take her bike, and the bike had a basket in the front of it, and she would put like a tablecloth to show that she would have maybe bought some bread, eggs, or whatever. And she would do this regularly. But then on occasion, when there was information to be delivered, she would do that, or even she would even take a gun or anything that would be helpful to the Allies. So she would then cover it with a tablecloth until she would return. And that's and actually, my cousin told me that she knew exactly who it was that turned her in, which is dreadful. But she was then also sent to Auschwitz. All of my relatives, my mom, my dad, and Nina, all ended up in Auschwitz. I even have a book here. Someone told me a few years ago that there was a book by the name of The 20th Train that talked about the sabotage of a train that left Belgium to go to Auschwitz. And they had intended to cause it to derail so that the people could then jump out of the train. And unfortunately, something went wrong. And maybe a handful of people were able to jump out of the train. But oddly enough, I was told that at the end of the book, the name of over 1,000 people who were on the train are listed in order. You had children as little as a few weeks old, elderly people in their 90s who were on that train. And everything in that book was so specific. They had the person's name, where they came from, their age, what kind of work they did, next to every single name. And yes, the name of my mother, my aunt, and my uncle are one after another on the specific day that they were taken away. So I was in shock when I found out that there is other proof that they were taken to Auschwitz. Any other questions?
Claire, before we continue, I was wondering if you might share with us some more of your memories from when you were in hiding with your beloved grandparents during the war, Lambert and Leah Sabo.
There is really not much that I can tell you other than the fact that they taught me how to play the piano, which is something that to this day I'm still teaching thanks to them. They could not get books to read to me, or because that in itself would be dangerous, but the music they did have. And due to the fact that the lady had been a concert musician, she was able to teach me everything she knew. So I learned to play the piano, and not only did I learn to play it, but I learned to love music. And to this day, I'm in the choir in our temple. And in school, I even was in the glee club. And music is very much part of my life. And I did get a couple of letters once I came to America from the people where I lived. And they said, please never give up your music. Never give up your music. And I'm glad to say I never did, and I never will. So, the few things that I remember doing to pass the time away, I would play solitaire and just go on with the day. I think I would sort of make believe I was going to school. In the morning, I would get up and pretend I was going to school. Then I would start to play the piano, and I just would let the day go by. But they always made sure that I was well taken care of, and they loved me very, very, very much. So I owe everything. They risked their lives to save me. On one particular occasion, I mentioned to you about my aunt and uncle who were taken away by the Nazis. Their two children were also in hiding. And I remember the day where they came to the house. And this was, again, during the war, and the Gestapo was in the area, no less. And they were asked not to reveal if the Gestapo came in that I was sleeping. And the older one said, and why not? But the younger one said, no. If the Gestapo comes in, don't you dare say anything. But we were very fortunate. The Gestapo did not stop. They did come by another day. They knocked on the door, and the grand-mère, I'll call her grand-mère, was fumbling with her keys and asked them if they could possibly come back. And oddly enough, they did, because I'm sure had they not, I would have been taken away, and possibly they would have been taken away as well. Those were very, very terrible time. And I will also mention other things that happened during the war, but this is basically what I remember about this wonderful couple who made sure that I was well taken care of.
And Lambert was a musician as well, a drummer, right?
Yeah, he was a drummer, and he would take me to the cafe at first, and I would listen and watch him. And I remember as if it was yesterday, because during the day he might be moving furniture for people in a wheelbarrow, but then by nighttime he would put on a suit and shine his shoes and wear a white shirt. I can see that so vividly, that every night this is what he would do. And then he would go to the cafes, which was down the street from where we lived. But I
And he was able to bring you.
at first. The dangers with the Jewish people did not happen immediately. There was a lot of propaganda, as you know, and it happened gradually. At first, as a matter of fact, we had no knowledge at all of what was going to happen. We kept on hoping that it was not going to get as bad as it did, but it didn't take long. It really didn't take long. I'm just talking about really at first. I was able to join him when he went to the cafe, but I remember it very vividly.
I know you have some more of your story during the war that I know that you want to gift us with before I ask you a question that really moves us to after the war.
Yeah, actually, it's a little different from what you might think. For me, the worst part was after the war. I had lived through bombing, having my family taken away, and also I had seen planes overhead getting shot down, and even had the sabot save a soldier who landed by their house with his parachute. My father had promised to sew a garment with it, from it, but he never got the opportunity to do so. He was captured soon after the incidents. But the ally that they saved was able to return to his base. We often heard sirens and hid either in the cellar or in shelter, but I still felt safe and protected thanks to the wonderful Christian couple who, as I said before, risked their lives to save mine. Can I go further now?
Please, please.
Now that the war was over, I was relieved to hear that my beloved cousin Nina survived the horrors that she must have witnessed in Auschwitz, and that there were a few other survivors, all with numbers on their arms. I hoped and prayed that soon my parents would also return. I was still with the Christian family, and I would visit Nina and her parents. But then one day, they had me visit a friend at a camp for children. I was petrified when I realized that my aunt had left me behind. When camp was finally over, I returned with Nina and my aunt. That's when I learned that I was not going to return to the Sabot family. I loved Nina very much, and she tried to explain to me why it was necessary for me to live with family and that I would still be able to visit the Sabots. I was able to go back to school, but that too was difficult. I refused at the age of 10 to go to first grade and be with 6-year-olds. And I was given 3 months to catch up with the rest of the class. But at least I was able to visit the Sabot family, and I did make a close friend. Soon after, Nina told me that distant relatives offered to have me move to America, where they insisted I would have a better life. Again, I refused. Then I learned that my best friend Antoinette that I had met in school, was going to live in the United States. And Nina thought that this was such a wonderful opportunity for me. I was always unable to say no to Nina. But not saying goodbye to the Sabot family broke my heart, and it also broke their heart. I did hear from them once when I moved, a couple of times when I moved to America, but the news was not good. I have to thank Pam Cancher for asking me if I submitted the names of this wonderful family, Madame Leah and Monsieur Lambert Sabot, to the Department of Righteous Gentiles at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem to recognize this brave couple who risked their lives to save mine. Thanks to the form she provided me, their names are now included on the list of righteous Gentiles and are being honored in Israel and Belgium on the day of Yom HaShoah, the Day of Remembrance. This is one more reason why I'm so grateful for the outstanding work that the Holocaust Education Organization is doing. I left Belgium in 1949 with my dear friend Antoinette and her parents. The trip on the Queen Elizabeth II was fantastic. Unfortunately, we parted ways when my distant cousin met us in New York. We left for Cleveland, Ohio, and my friend left for California. I was 13 years old at the time. Not knowing how to speak English was the least of my problems. At school, they wanted me to move back to the 4th grade. Again, I refused to go to class with 9 years old. I was again given 3 months to learn the language, the math, etc. My distant cousin made my life miserable. And after less than 1 year, she turned me over to Belfair, a home for problem children, or if you like, children who had problems at home. My self-esteem, something that started during the war because I was Jewish, now my distant cousin added insult to injury, in Yiddish no less, to make me feel worse. There is no doubt in my mind that mental abuse can be very, very detrimental. Any questions?
Yes. So Claire, just to go back just a little bit, after Auschwitz was liberated, how quickly were you actually able to connect with your close cousin Nina? She was a few years older than you. How quick were you able to connect with her, and what did she share with you after the war about your parents, specifically your father?
Right. As I said to you, as I mentioned before, I was still living with the Sabot family for some time after the war, and I would go and visit my aunt, and that's how I found out that Nina was able to be liberated from Auschwitz. And to be honest, I never questioned her about what she must have endured. But I always loved that girl. I always loved her. And she was always very sweet towards me as well. It took some time, maybe 6 months, but it was a gradual thing with people coming back from the war and also the liberation and also getting things a little bit, at the end of the war, I do remember when the Allies marched through the streets of Brussels and everybody was so happy that the war was over. There was celebration. So between the celebration and being able, once again, to be able to walk outside and not have to worry about being stopped or being taken away or other relatives being taken away. It just took some time until, as I mentioned before when the people that I lived with were taken to court and I had to move in with Nina and her mom, that Nina sat down with me and also explained the fact that I was Jewish. Up to that time, during the war, you may call it pretended that I was Christian. I pretended I was a grandchild of that family. It was like a pretend game, if you want to call it that way. But nonetheless, Nina then mentioned that I was Jewish, and they even sent me to a school to learn how to read in Yiddish a little bit and how to write the Hebrew alphabet during the summer. But I had a close relationship with them before the war. So it was not that difficult after the war to resume. But Nina had issues. She had terrible migraines. She had a lot of uh, things that she had to deal with herself. And I tried very hard not to make it worse for her. All that she did say to me is that I used to drive her crazy because she used to try to get back to studying and doing writing at home. And I used to spend my time playing the piano during that time. So she couldn't concentrate on her studies. So she did mention that to me a couple of times. And she would reminisce about the time when I was a little girl as well. And talk about how much she adored my dad and how he meant the world to her. And how when she was in Auschwitz, knowing that he was there gave her the strength to carry on. And she mentioned to me that the people in Auschwitz knew my father. He had helped a lot of them, maybe their husband, maybe their son, other people to get out of Belgium. And so, therefore, they admired my father. And she feels that it's thanks to my dad that she received special treatment from some of the people in Auschwitz because of my dad. Unfortunately, because he was in the underground, he was not in a concentration camp per se like the rest of them, but in their prison where they would actually interrogate him and he would be given, Nina says, maybe 5 minutes to go outside, and she would feel so good seeing him at least walking out until the day she did not. But she always hoped that somehow he managed to escape or get away. So she too had that hope in her heart.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you. Thank you. And we do have some questions from audience, actually. I'm going to ask one of them. So let's see here. This question is, what did Nina say? What were the reasons that Nina shared or had when she was persuading you to migrate to the United States to be with family here, distant family you had never met before?
As I said before, they were getting mail from them regularly, telling Nina and her mom that with everything that went on in Belgium, and also Nina having to deal with her own horrors that she had to endure, that it was for my benefit to move to America where I would feel the freedom and still be with family. So at first she did not insist for me to go, but then I had made that friend Antoinette, and by the way, I still get in touch with her. She's stayed friends with me all these years. So and Antoinette, I found out not too long ago, her parents also were Holocaust survivors, and but they were from Hungary originally, and they did survive the war, and they were able to immigrate to America where they had family in America. But for me, I was actually alone by myself. So it was a little bit different, but I had perseverance, determination, and I do feel one of your questions has to do with what I try to teach young people today, that through anything you go through in life, you must have that perseverance, determination to that you're going to get through it. That whatever happens, you just have the faith and hope that things can get better. And I feel that it's so important for children to realize that things like COVID that we've had to go through, I had to smile, excuse me for saying that, when children said they couldn't graduate, they couldn't go to school. This is a right, they were not forced, they were per se, it's not as if they said you cannot have education anymore, you're forbidden to be educated. They said, yes, you can do it on Zoom, we'll teach you another way, you will be able to continue with your lessons. I was forbidden. Any Jewish child was totally forbidden to be educated. So, and I am so glad now that things are getting better, but I feel that it is such a shame that so many children to this day, because of this COVID, are having all these problems dealing with the fact that they couldn't go to school. For what? For a few months? For less than a year? For me, it was 5 years. And had Belgium not been liberated, had Europe not been liberated, that it would have been worse yet. So I feel that have patience, have determination. If I could do it, you can do it. So that's something I'd like to share with the young people today.
I'm sending you the biggest hug here virtually right now over this Zoom. Claire, a question. So first you migrated to Cleveland, Ohio. How did you then make your way from Cleveland to Florida?
When I was in Cleveland, and after, this is in my little report, but I can just go ahead and give it to you.
Sorry.
After I was in the at Belfair, I had a very nice social worker. Her name was Julia Starr, and she decided that I did not belong there, that she would have me move into a foster home. And my foster parents were Evelyn and Alec Nathanson, and they had 2 small children. And I too keep in touch with the little one who was born while I was living with them. So I adore that child. To me, she's still a child, and we do keep in touch. So this is where I was after. And by the time I graduated high school, I got the opportunity to go with a dear friend to a dance. And while I was at the dance, I met my future husband, Claire Soria, who originally also immigrated from Tunisia. The one thing we definitely had in common is that we both spoke French. His parents spoke French. His whole family did too. And I was at that point feeling still, not totally that I belonged, but with his family, I started to feel like at long last I belong once more. And we had 3 children, Robert, that you met here, being my baby. And I have 2 older children. My daughter will be coming to visit me next week. And I showed you the picture of my older son and his family that they came to visit me less than 2 weeks ago.
I figure it'll be a good time to share this picture.
Yeah. And if you notice, my son I'm lighting the Havdalah candle. I'm probably ready uh, to say so long to the Sabbath. And next to me is my son, Robert, my granddaughter, Jacqueline, my grandson, Joseph, my other granddaughter, Jessica, and her 3 children. The little one in the front, all the way in the front, all the way in the front is no, there you go, it's Oliver. Today is his birthday. So we all want to wish him a happy birthday. And he's 6 years old today. And then we have Violet in the middle. And then the very little one that my granddaughter Jessica is holding is Mila. And the young man to her right is Sandy. That's Jacqueline's boyfriend. So to me, to have them all here to celebrate the end of Shabbat is just phenomenal. When I think that my life was spared thanks to that wonderful Sabo family, and that now I have this beautiful family to celebrate the Sabbath, which I never thought I would be able to do. It's very, very special. You do have one more picture, don't you?
I do. Would you mind explaining what's happening here in this photo for us?
Do you see the young lady on the left? I'm in the middle. That young lady on the left, her name is also Jacqueline. They were both, I have 2 Jacquelines named after my beloved father-in-law who passed away. And this one became a school teacher. And of all things, she now lives in San Jose. And when she went to college, she decided to write a report about my life. And she continued to do so when she was teaching about the Holocaust to her class. And she told me that at the end of her presentation, she happened to mention that the story she just told was of her grandmother. And the class said they would love to meet me. So within a couple of years, I made sure to go and visit her. And here I am in the middle with all of the children in her class after my presentation. And there is our future. These are the children that give me hope. And I tell them about my life, what I went through. And these young people, I'm sure, don't all have it easy, because they also have things that they have to deal with. But it makes it a little easier knowing that other people have had to struggle in their lives as well. But what a special occasion for me. And it was not my children who were interested to tell my life, but it seems it's my grandchildren. And even my grandson, Joseph, you saw in the previous picture, we just did a podcast, which he's going to actually put together very shortly about my life. To me, this is so amazing that my story will live on long after I'm gone. And hopefully it will be beneficial so that the world can be a better place to live.
Claire, while we're looking at this photo, you've already spoken to, parts of this, but it's such an important question I want to ask again. What lessons do you want to make sure our youth and adults take away from studying the Holocaust?
Number one, especially, they have to know about the horrors that occurred during the war and how that is totally unacceptable. We have to have respect for one another. It doesn't matter what religion, what nationality, that is foremost. But then we also have to teach the children to have the wisdom to go on and teach about the Holocaust so that what happened does not happen ever again. But let us not forget the wonderful people who risked their lives, who did everything in their power to save the lives of Jewish people. Even today, and I always seem to go back to the COVID, when I think of the nurses, the doctors who work tirelessly to save the lives of others, this is what gives me hope for the future, the people who are out there to make this a better world.
Thank you so much, Claire. And there are a few questions here from the audience, but we also have some questions together that we wanted to make sure to respond to. Would you first begin for us by one question? Were you able to keep in touch with the Sabos, your grandparents, Lambert and Leah? And then actually a question from the audience was, not only were you able to keep in touch with Lambert and Leah, but also their descendants?
That I can give you a very brief answer for that. The Sabo family, when I came here, I mentioned to you that I did hear from them, but the news was not good. The Lambert, the one who played the drums, mentioned that his wife had gotten quite sick after I left, and he actually felt that it had to be her heart, and for me leaving didn't help. So that's why I said that broke my heart. And he did not last more than a year after that. They were elderly people. They did have a daughter. I only saw her once. And relatives, friends, I have absolutely no account of any of them. So I'm so sorry about that.
Thank you so much, Claire. And another question from the audience, Evelyn Stern. She's actually asking, what happened to Nina? Did she come to the US?
Actually, she still is living in Brussels, but I did have the privilege of not only having Nina visit me, but her mom and her dad, they also visit me in America. And I visited them in Belgium. Since then, my aunt and uncle are not around anymore, and Nina is in her 90s. So, but when we talk together, it's like yesterday. It's just wonderful. And I treasure the one thing that did happen. I'd like to tell you this. I mentioned to you that I never asked her about what went on during the war. And I was in shock when someone contacted me that she's trying to put her story together on paper. And I said, if there's a possibility that you can give me a copy, I would love it. And within a few months, I did get a copy. And I was so, so thankful. However, when I mentioned it to Nina, how thankful I was, she said, I don't want you to repeat any of this to anyone. The only thing I repeated is when she mentioned about her grandparents, who were my grandparents, I was able to know what their names were, where they came from, where they lived in Poland, so that I can share with you. But the atrocity and what she witnessed and when she went through, she also said to me that after the war, it was really difficult for her as well, because once she left the concentration camp, being a woman, she did not have it that easy either. People didn't trust her. They didn't want her to be around them because they felt that it was dangerous for them. So she had it took her forever to get back to Brussels.
This is a beautiful question from Joseph Soria.
I see it.
Please ask my grandma, why is she the greatest?
Will you please tell him he just is prejudiced, that's all. And also tell him that Lisa wants to make sure that we wish his nephew, Oliver, happy birthday.
Happy birthday to Oliver. And Claire, I know we are running out of time. Is it okay if I ask you two more questions?
Can I just add a couple things first, quickly?
Please.
I have to mention a few people who mean a lot to me. The Lester family, Richard and his son Gary and their family who interviewed me in September 2008. Filmmaker Gary Lester's award-winning production, Deliver Us from Evil, a Holocaust film about my story, was selected as audience favorite short film winner at the Daytona Beach Film Festival and also screened on the same weekend at the Nonviolence International Film Festival in Ontario, Canada. His books and another one called Hidden in the Third Reich has my story in it, and those also appeared all over the world. And I also had the privilege of meeting a wonderful opera star piano teacher whose family came from nobility. She gave me a transcript of her life, hoping that someday I would publish her a book about her story. And after 30 years, I met a wonderful lady by the name of Susan Bernard Temple. Thanks to her, Béranger's story is now available on Amazon. And recently, our choir at Temple Beth Shalom in Palm Coast, thanks to Phyllis's son Russell Wolf, put together a CD with music from the shtetl. These are the towns that my grandparents and those that they knew were living in. So that particular CD is also available, and they represent the music from our past. But of course, most of all, I want to thank you, dear Serena and Pam, Cancer, and the Holocaust Education Organization for putting on programs such as this one to convey important lessons for us to learn from the Holocaust.
Our privilege. Dear Claire, one question here that I wanted to absolutely make sure to ask here. Does, this is from the audience, does the daughter of the Sabos, did they know that their parents were honored as righteous Gentiles?
I have no contact with them. I have no idea. I know.
No, thank you, Claire. Thank you so much. A question here. What does never forget mean to you?
Would you believe it? Robbie just gave me this note.
Oh my goodness.
Can you see it? Or it's backwards, isn't it? Okay, it says,
well, let me explain the question. Excuse me for this, but I had to ask. My mom always avoids this question for some reason. People always ask my mom, at least I've seen it at times where they've asked the question as far as hatred. They say that do you fester any anger or any hatred based upon what goes on? And my mom always says in her response that she doesn't. And I'm gonna let her elaborate on it. But the one thing that she always says, she says, and she uses it as a quote. She goes, "As Jews, we forgive, but we never forget." And that's my mom. So anyway, I'll let you elaborate on that if you'd like. I hate putting her on the spot.
Yes. The other thing I'd like to add to it is that if you don't forgive people, you're hurting yourself as well, because you cannot hold that in you and try to make a change in the world. There's nothing worse than hatred, and it doesn't do any of us any good. So I feel that we have to go above it and be an example. We have a Hebrew expression, tikkun olam. We want to repair the world. We want to make this a better world. So the only way we can do it is to have faith and make sure that the young people are not only aware of what, too many places now are already saying that what happened to the Holocaust, it's just a myth. We have to continue talking and making sure that this is not acceptable. We will continue making sure that the people, if you say it long enough, maybe most of the people will start to believe it. And then the world will be better.
Claire, thank you so much. I am thoroughly inspired every time I get the chance to speak with you, learn from you. I am sending you the biggest hug, all my love. For months, I've been so excited for this program together and to make sure that your voice has a platform. And while we have reached the conclusion of our time together today, certainly this is not the end. There will be many, many more future events to look forward to together. To close us out, Claire, in case you did not see, I want to read to you maybe just some words from audience who's actually been writing words of admiration into the chat. Here are just two. We have Fred Brown, who exclaimed, "It is so important that our young people learn your story," and many others of what happened during the Holocaust. Thank you for sharing your story. And there is a woman named Claire Gilos, who says, "It sounds like the necessity of adaptation to your new Belgian family, and later the American environment gave you skills and tools to build up strength and balance later in your life." She says, "I'm Claire from Brussels, and imagine that my family might have seen you in the streets of Brussels during the war." Thank you so much for sharing your story. And Claire, I'll make sure that I connect you both further.
Wow.
We really clearly, Claire, cannot thank you enough. Do you have anything? We're at the end of our program today. I'm just going to close out with some announcements, but before I do, is there anything further that you would like to make sure to mention today?
Basically, to thank everyone, and I hope that whatever I had to say is beneficial for everyone. I will continue to speak in schools as long as I'm asked to do so, because in the hopes for a brighter tomorrow. And your questions were so well put together, Serena. I really feel that it is important for everyone to get a better insight. And there's not many of us left who can actually talk about it. So as many as you can to speak about the Holocaust now, make sure that they do so, because our group is dwindling, unfortunately. And to be able to have it now on Zoom or YouTube or whatever they call it, modern technology, is so beneficial. But let's try to get as many out there who tell their stories, so that firsthand is so important for the people to realize what it's all about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Claire. And I just wanted to read this one. Felicia Smith in the audience says, "Merci, c'était fantastique." And I know my French is terrible, but I wanted to give it a shot.
Merci beaucoup.
And to our audience today, thank you for being with us and for writing such meaningful questions and dialogues into the chat. I'm just going to take 1 minute with some announcements. After today, you will receive an email with a link to take a short survey where you can provide your feedback. Please take a few moments to complete this. We greatly appreciate your time. The recording of today's special event with Claire Soria will be actually uploaded to our website by tomorrow, and we will include resources actually on that page for further learning about her story. Please share with family, friends, and colleagues who missed this opportunity to watch at their leisure. My colleagues are also posting links into the chat where you can actually donate to the Holocaust Center and support our mission. Thank you all so much for your financial support to keep these special live programs, as Claire said, going. The next virtual event will actually be this Wednesday, June 30th, also a part of our In My Own Words series. You will not want to miss this opportunity to hear Barbara Winton tell the story and legacy of her late father, Sir Nicholas Winton, who rescued 669 children during the Holocaust. Barbara will also be interviewed and in conversation with Kim Masters, who is the editor-at-large of The Hollywood Reporter, as well as the daughter of one of the children who Sir Nicholas Winton actually saved. So please join us this Wednesday at noon and just register on our website. With all of this, on behalf of the Holocaust Center, Thank you all so much for being with us today. Happiest birthday to Oliver, his 6th birthday. And I hope you all please just stay safe. Hope to see you soon at upcoming events and welcome you in person here at the museum. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Claire and Robbie, sending you both all my love here through this Zoom. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you so very much. What an outstanding job you're doing. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you both. It's my privilege. Have a wonderful day, everyone.